In the previous sketch, we provided a general overview of the amino acids. Now that you know them all, we can talk about the amino acid derivatives. To understand them, we'll take a stroll in front of the Natural History Museum of Amino Animals. It's a beautiful day in New York City. The Natural History Museum of Amino Animals sheds light on the origins of the animals from the zoo. It's a must-see for anyone who loves animals. Unfortunately, we came on the wrong day. The museum is closed for maintenance. But, hey, maybe we can still learn something from the facade? As you can see from this diagram, we derive a lot of our important neurotransmitters, hormones, and cofactors from amino acids. That's right, they're more than just protein Legos, and we're going to go through each one. We'll start with arginine, which is represented by the orangutan statue. The mnemonic, "Know your creatures," will help you remember that nitric oxide, urea, and creatine come from arginine. We drew the orangutan holding bioptics because making nitric oxide from arginine requires BH4. Finally, making creatine from arginine requires glycine and SAM. We'll talk about why SAM is important soon. For now, just think of this grasshopper and the kid eating a sandwich next to the orangutan to help you remember glycine and SAM. Note the word creatures below these characters to remind you of creatine. On to methionine. Just like in our amino acid sketch, we'll use a mountain lion to represent methionine. But not a real one, thankfully. Just a statue. Anyway, methionine is a precursor to SAM. S-adenosyl methionine synthetase uses ATP to make SAM. FYI, it's also called SAMe, but we prefer SAM. It's much less infantilizing. SAM transfers one carbon methyl groups for many different reactions and is needed to methylate DNA and RNA, make phospholipids, proteins, melatonin, creatine, epinephrine, and more. We drew a banner that says "Donate CH3 coins" right above our kid eating the sandwich. Before we wrap up methionine, you should know that it's also needed to make carnitine. This requires lysine and vitamin C. We illustrated a carnita stand for carnitine, a lysine lizard, and an orange tree for vitamin C. The next amino acid we'll talk about is histidine, represented by the snake statue. Histidine decarboxylase catalyzes the conversion of histidine to histamine with help from vitamin B6. You've probably heard of histamine before, especially if you have seasonal allergies. Histamine is involved in the inflammatory response. Basophils and mast cells release histamine in response to foreign invaders. Histamine increases the permeability of the capillaries, allowing leukocytes to enter the site of inflammation. You can think of this beehive as a mast cell, and the bees represent histamine. And don't forget about those ducks. They always come in pairs. Are you hungry? Then come grab something at the gluten-free food stand. As you probably already know, glutamate is gluten-free. Okay, maybe not, but that's our sketchy symbol. Glutathione comes from glutamate. Glutathione is a naturally occurring antioxidant that's made in the liver. The main function of glutathione is neutralizing reactive oxygen species. You can watch our pentose phosphate pathway sketch to learn more about glutathione. Anytime you see someone with massive glutes and thighs, I want you to think of glutathione. Glutamate is also a precursor to the inhibitory neurotransmitter GABA. Glutamate decarboxylase uses vitamin B6 to catalyze this reaction. To remember GABA, think of CAB-A, and of course, a pair of ducks for pyridoxine. Let's move on to glycine. Glycine is needed to make porphyrin. Porphyrin is a large ring molecule that binds to iron to make heme. As you probably already know, heme is a part of hemoglobin. It specifically binds to oxygen so that hemoglobin can transport oxygen to all the tissues in your body. Yeah, it's kind of important. Illustrated here is a person riding the world-famous Grasshopper motorcycle. And check it out, they paid extra for the spinning heme rims. The enzyme aminolevulinic acid, ALA, synthase catalyzes the rate-limiting step in the heme synthesis pathway of making ALA from glycine and succinyl-CoA. By the way, ALA synthase also requires vitamin B6. So that's why there's a pair of ducks crossing the road in front of the Grasshopper motorcycle. Hey, that reminds me of a joke. I'll tell it to you when you're older. Okay, next up is phenylalanine. Phenylalanine is super important. It's a precursor to tyrosine, melanin, and the catecholamines, namely dopamine, norepinephrine, and epinephrine. See our catecholamine synthesis sketch to learn more about all that. It's also a precursor to thyroxine, aka T4. The thyroid follicular cells make T4 from tyrosine. Look at the banners above. The arrows correspond to the direction in the pathway. First comes a phenylalanine fennec fox. To the right is the new Spiroid Museum. It just makes my thyroid giddy. And then there's an epic animals exhibit. I'm sure it's going to be epic? Let's turn our attention to tryptophan and this turkey dog stand. Tryptophan is needed to make vitamin B3, aka niacin, with help from vitamin B2, riboflavin, and vitamin B6. Nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide, or NAD, an electron carrier that serves as a coenzyme for many important metabolic reactions, comes from niacin. While you're enjoying a turkey dog and NADH energy, buy a New York is Nice t-shirt and watch two ducks fighting over a piece of rye bread. Don't forget to buy some Happy Face mugs. Remember that serotonin is most often associated with mood. It's a lot more complex than that, but we won't talk about that here. Just know that it comes from tryptophan and requires BH4 and vitamin B6. The clerk is wearing bioptics to watch the ducks fight. Tryptophan hydroxylase uses BH4 to turn tryptophan to 5-HTP. Then, tryptophan decarboxylase uses vitamin B6 to turn 5-HTP to serotonin. Last but not least, tryptophan is a precursor to melatonin, which controls circadian rhythms during the sleep-wake cycle. Before we finish, you should know that glutamine, aspartate, and glycine are needed to make purines, while glutamine and aspartate are needed for pyrimidines. Have a gander at our purine-pyrimidine synthesis sketch for more information. Okay, it's time to wrap up this sketch. Arginine is a precursor to nitric oxide, urea, and creatine. Methionine is a precursor to SAM, which transfers one-carbon methyl groups during different reactions. Carnitine is derived from methionine, lysine, and requires vitamin C. Histidine is needed to make histamine with help from vitamin B6. Glutathione and GABA come from glutamate. GABA synthesis requires vitamin B6. Porphyrin synthesis requires glycine and vitamin B6. Phenylalanine is the precursor to tyrosine, thyroxine, melanin, and the catecholamines. Niacin, serotonin, and melatonin come from tryptophan. Niacin synthesis requires riboflavin and vitamin B6. Serotonin synthesis requires BH4 and vitamin B6.